Here's an interesting problem caused by the culture of empire. Instead of having horizontal human relationships built on friendship and community, or things like affection and love, the pyramid opens up vertical relationships and actually makes them take precedence. Remember, the pyramid in Lesson 1 illustrated a hierarchy of power that encompasses all of us and puts us all in a particular power level. Well, a power-based hierarchical society of such massive scale, I believe, results in the loss of love and the triumph of narcissism. I think it actually enshrines narcissism. And we can see this walking around a city's business district where guys in their 30s are projecting power all over the place with their suits and slicked hair and sunglasses and just the general corporate personas. They're constantly jockeying for power, trying to establish themselves in the power hierarchy to figure out the pecking order. And one of the problems of a narcissistic society is it can cause us to look down the pyramid to blame the little people for problems. Like, remember these exponential problems we covered earlier in the lesson. The people on top actually despise the system they built, but they end up despising the little people who are hostage to it. And that's no surprise. Contempt is a trait of narcissism. I actually think Hollywood has helped prepare us for the level of narcissism we have in society today. For the last 20 years or more, they've been pumping out ridiculous amounts of narcissism. Narcissistic men and women, narcissistic police like all the Schwarzenegger characters, and narcissistic Wall Street executives like Michael Douglas here in the movie Wall Street. And lo and behold, here we are 20 years later with real-life versions of all those things. Narcissistic men and women, narcissistic police, looking just like the Schwarzenegger characters and the stormtroopers from Star Wars. And narcissistic Wall Street executives. By the way, that's Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase and Lloyd Blankfein of Goldman Sachs. Pretty darn good examples of what I'm talking about here. And there are so many more examples. It's broadcast all over the media. Narcissistic power just being thrown at us through the television. And we probably wouldn't want to be friends with any of these folks if they lived in our neighborhood. We certainly wouldn't want them babysitting our kids. Heaven forbid. But we're drawn to them in deep ways as they come through the television. We start to identify with them. TV has a way of making us feel small. And the other people on the other side of the TV screen are therefore big. So all these big, important, powerful people out there are being broadcast to just little old me sitting in the living room. We have to become aware of this issue and stop feeling small and recover our humanity, recover our local communities, and getting to know people directly rather than relying on things broadcast to us through the television. If we can recover our humanity in that way, then we may be able to reduce another big problem of a narcissistic society, which is hero worship. Whether it's the Oscars and Grammys, or sports heroes, or savior figures like Jack Bauer, or our politicians, left and right both. They're narcissistic projections. They're not real people. They're actors reading from a script written by strategic marketing people who have written it in a way that it will manipulate us and make us feel a certain way. Now, I suggest another result of our exponentially increasing system and the culture of empire is increasing pathology. There's this huge disconnect between the head and the heart. Our heads are indoctrinated to believe we're living in freedom in a sort of a flat society and a free market, but our guts know it's not the case. Our instinct knows we're in a top-down controlled empire system. And I think the middle class really struggles with this, as they're the ones cranking the system, thinking they're free, but feeling their truth. And in this picture, the mom feels the struggle clearly, where she has her head world in one hand and her heart and her real world in the other arm. And people like this can't really express their truth because they have to act like everything's fine during a normal day and put the smile on the face. And they can only talk truth behind the closed doors of like a pastor or therapist's office. But as I said before, many therapists and pastors are trained to think their job is to help someone conform to our work system. So that can bias their work. Well, the lower class may struggle with this disconnect as well, but my guess is that they feel the weight of this pyramid. They know they're not in a free system. So, carrying the simple burden of being at the bottom of such a massive scale system will likely be their struggle. And then the upper class is quite different. Remember the previous issue of narcissism. Well, if you lord over this system as a banker and become a billionaire by putting others in debt, and then later you jack up their credit card rates and kick them out of their homes, and you wear an outfit that might cost more than some people's annual salary, well, that can't help but breed narcissism. Otherwise, if a person like this wasn't narcissistic, they would leave their job. They would question the sanity of the system and look for another way to contribute to community. But to stay in their jobs, they have to believe in their heads that they're doing good, which requires a narcissistic separation from reality. Then I believe there's increasing oppression as well, as even lower layers get pushed out of the pyramid. Remember the indigenous populations that have been destroyed? They didn't conform to the system. They shouldn't have had to. Maybe they couldn't. But they weren't even really given an opportunity to. They were just destroyed and pushed out. And that's not just history. This is a picture of the Aguaruna and Wampi Indians in Peru being attacked by their military and police just last year to make room for U.S. oil companies to take their land. Many of them were killed. And then we have the people that the empire system has to label handicapped. And they get boxed into little enclaves because the empire system doesn't know what to do with them because they can't earn bank credit, so they really have no purpose in this top-down controlled system. Now, even though it makes a lot of people uncomfortable to talk about these issues, this stuff cannot be ignored anymore. And finally, this system eventually overpowers governments, just due to the fact it must continue to grow. When the economy was small enough to fit into the states, it wasn't a problem, but it eventually pushed through the borders and basically eliminated the states, as we discussed in Lesson 1, so corporations could operate nationally. Then it was only a matter of time before they'd push against the national borders. Countries have already been eliminated at the capital level, as the global bond market transcends nations and it's completely stateless, and it controls all the nations, most of the nations. And this has largely already happened at the microeconomic level as well. Everything's been offshored and outsourced, and companies operate across multiple countries. They have no national identity. And now the system's working on a global currency. Then only the political aspect of borders will remain, and I suspect the system will try to eliminate those. That's the next move. So banks and corporations, given our empire system, eventually replace the people's governments. And that's a serious problem. And so that finishes off my list of the destructive nature of the culture of empire. Some of you watching may have other ideas. Maybe this has triggered some other aspects of the culture of empire that you feel is destructive. Please send your ideas my way. I think we all need to dialogue about these issues. It's literally the Empire versus the Republic from Star Wars. It's the dark side versus the Force. It's narcissism versus love. And I suggest we might want to replace the Ivy League economists that currently serve as Yoda, the high priest of our system, and start hearing the voices of our communities. Because where we're headed, if you remember the last point in this lesson, is an empire system that transcends national borders and destroys communities even more. And let's discuss that next in Lesson 5, the emerging global empire.